Well, whether it's Joe Rayo on the weather left or Joe Chaffee on the weather right, it is the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Indeed, yes. Even though there's a something called an election going on tonight, we are here, and the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider. Are you ready for winter, Joe Rayo? Are you ready?
I hope so. I haven't
Because
actually, to tell you the truth, I haven't started my snowblower in a couple of months. Maybe I should do that tomorrow.
well, if the day should ever come where Mrs. Rayo just can't or doesn't want to fix your snowblower anymore, then you can go to Omni True Value Hardware, where you can get a new one and all the rock salt, mag ice melting pellets and flakes, Petalo Premium Snow and Ice Melter, Biomelt, Geomelt, spreaders, shovels, whatever you need to take your care of your winter storm needs. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125, or go to the website omnitruevalue.com. So, on election days where in the past you could have all sorts of weird weather going on around the country, this one's pretty quiet for the most part, coast to coast.
I tell you, Joe, I could remember in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy in 2012, about a week or so after that, we were looking at an election night where the next day we were considering anywhere from 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 inches of snow for the New York City metropolitan area. That is not going to be the case, obviously, this go around. In fact, if anything, I would say that we're going to be moving now into a long stretch of dry and increasingly milder weather. We may not see another drop of precipitation here until maybe about Wednesday or Thursday of next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. Some of that, how long it is before we get any rain, may actually depend on Hurricane Eta. After it goes back, probably going to be going into the Northwest Caribbean after it crosses Central America. What's going to be left of it? What happens after that? Maybe it develops to a certain extent, and does that moisture push far enough north? We had a GFS run earlier today that actually rushed up some rain um, a little bit sooner than late next week. The next run of the GFS, of course, backs away from that, and you have various other models doing various other things. But this one in is a Category 4 this afternoon. Kind of hesitated a little bit right before landfall, and now it's moving straight west. They're still carrying on the 7 o'clock advisory, um, 965 millibars, 110 mile an hour winds, but it did go in as a Category 4. It's at 13.8, 83.7, moving west at 5, so very, very slowly. This means torrential rains likely uh, for much of Central America, and it's probably going to be raining there pretty much through the rest of this week and maybe even into this weekend because we still got this huge gyre that sits over Central America, and it's just spawning all sorts of moisture, even without the hurricane.
I would say that this is going to be a rather perplexing go for the folks at the National Hurricane Center because after this storm kind of twists and turns first northeast, northwest, north, and then northeast, it then is beginning to show signs that it is going to be moving in on possibly Florida by the end of this weekend. And of course, that's a very large and heavily populated region to be concerned about, especially a hurricane or a tropical cyclone so late in the season. But this is the kind of storm that Ada is, and we are going to be watching this for more than a few days ahead, I think.
Yeah, Hurricane Center forecast takes it west and then west northwest to just along the southern border of Belize by the time we get to early Friday morning. And then it goes into the Northwest Caribbean where it begins to re strengthen. I don't think it ever gets back to what it was,
No,
but you certainly could see this strengthen back to a tropical storm. And you'll notice that they do move it at a fairly decent clip here. from Friday to Saturday, and then from Saturday to Sunday, if the Hurricane Center forecast is correct, they have it right in the middle of the Florida Straits, uh, just to the southeast of Key West and to the southwest of Miami, probably about the same distance. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. This could wind up being more of a big rainmaker than anything else. I don't want to discount the possibility that this could wind up re-strengthening into a minimal hurricane. That's always possible, but I think you have to wait till we'll just have to wait till it gets into the Caribbean to see just exactly what the upper air looks like. And you're right. Given the time of year, we're in November, so this sort of thing doesn't happen too often. We don't have a lot of experience with storms, tropical storms hitting the United States during the month of November. So this will be a new one. And I mean, that has happened from time to time, but it really doesn't happen very often. I don't know what the stats are about landfalling systems in the month of November, but I imagine that they are rather few.
Yeah, I would think so myself. What was Wilma November? No, Wilma was
It's
not a November
October.
landfall.
Wilma was in October, I believe,
October.
late
Okay.
October. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So we'll see. But that's again getting ahead of ourselves. We're concerned about what is happening right now with the storm, and it is a devastating storm. It's likely leading to tremendous amounts of rainfall, flooding, mudslides in Central America, and of course tremendous wave heights right along the immediate coastal areas. So it is one for the books. I'm sure that we'll be referring to this down in future years as Eta 2020 because they're not going to retire any Greek letters. So that's the one way we're going to be defining this as the year of the storm. And 2020 has certainly already had quite a few systems of memory and note.
yeah, Joe Rayo monitoring the chat board tonight, folks. So if you got any questions, don't be shy. Put them up there. What I mean by the gyre, by the way, is if you take a look here at the GFS, the new GFS for this evening, forget where it has the storm. You obviously can see where that is, sitting right on the coast of Nicaragua. But if you look at the illustration of what the model shows, where rain has fallen in the last 6 hours, you will notice that it goes pretty far to the north, up into the Bahamas. You've got showers there, and you're seeing, for some reason, I can now, my pen's not working. I want to draw. Well, it doesn't want to do it. Let's see if I can do it this way. Nope. We're
Can you
having
use your
issues tonight.
can you
Let's
use your
see.
can you use your finger?
No, I'm trying to. That's how I
Oh,
usually do it. No, it's not letting me for some reason. Oh well. But you get the idea. If you just look at the area of green, which is where rain would have fallen during the last 6 hours, you'll notice that it's got that uh, shape of a circulation. That is really reflecting what's going on in the higher levels of the atmosphere. This is what I'm talking about with regards to the gyre, and inside that gyre is the hurricane. It's only covering really a very small part of this. Not all that rain you see there really is coming from the hurricane. It's only that small area that's in Nicaragua, Honduras. But it's the gyre that's really driving all this. And when we move it forward, you'll see how the actual low center, the actual core, gets pretty far inland. I don't know how much of it's going to be left, but because pressures are so darn low that uh, either you have a remnant low that survives and then emerges into the Gulf, or maybe a new center forms under those remnants. And this is actually Friday morning, 1 a.m., into the open waters of the Northwest Caribbean. And it kind of circulates, does a little loop in there during the day on Friday before it begins to push up to the northeast. And you see it moves right over central Cuba and then backs north and northwestward from there into South Florida, comes out the other side, does another bit of a swirl there, and then just sort of dies out there in the Gulf of Mexico. The prior run was, I think, had a much more bullish view with regards to the development here. And I'll just back up one run, and you'll see it. The prior run actually had a bit more of a well-developed tropical storm that did the same idea, comes in Nicaragua. The low either jumps or either reforms, or it's the same remnant low. Starts to strengthen a bit as it approaches Cuba, and then into the Florida Straits over South Florida. Kind of does a little loop there in the northern Gulf, and then pushes to the northeast and gets absorbed. Uh, Joe, the prior run was trying to make the argument that the trough in the west was going to come out faster and the ridge in the east was going to flatten out somewhat, allowing for a front to get close and absorbing all this tropical moisture and pulling it up to the northeast. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think a lot really depends on pretty much the strength of this upper high and whether the models are rushing breaking it down. It actually has it right into the weekend, but for some reason the model decided to shift it east and weaken it Monday and Tuesday and allow some of that trough from the west to pull in and pull up some of that tropical moisture. Again, I'm not
Yeah,
sold on that at all.
you said it yesterday, and I still think it holds that over the span of the next several days coming up, the models are going to be doing everything that they possibly can with this system, moving it in every which direction.
Yeah.
So it really is not going to, I think, come clear. It really isn't going to come clear until after it completely frees itself from the land area of Central America, the mountain terrain. It's going to have to go back over open waters, and then I think once it's out there freely, that's when the models will be able to get a much better handle as to exactly where this thing is supposed to go, whether it heads for the Gulf, whether it heads for Florida. Till then, it's just going to be kind of a guessing game, kind of like, Joe, what the political experts are trying to do right now with the barest minimum of
Of
information
information. Yeah.
regarding today's election. They're trying to figure out which way the election is going to go and which direction, but it can go in any direction right now. And the same holds true in the forecasting game for Tropical Storm
And by
Eta.
the way, it's also quite possible that it could wind up getting stuck somewhere in the Northwest Caribbean and just meander there and never come out. That's all. That's always a possibility as well.
Right.
So we've got more. We've got days to watch it. Meanwhile, look at this satellite. It is. There was a stick of clouds. I know this morning that lined up right over me. I had very little sun today here. It was mostly cloudy virtually the entire day. There was a stick of clouds with a weak front that was moving down from upstate New York. If you were north of that little stick, and you see it there on the U.S. satellite loop finally disappearing, if you were north of that little stick, you had some breaks of sun. If you were south of that little stick, southern New Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, down into Maryland, Virginia, and the Carolinas and beyond, you had a beautiful, mostly sunny day. And now, of course, with that finally out of the way, we can participate in all that really nice weather that covers just about all of the country except the Pacific Northwest. We're looking good for the rest of the week, and I think right through Sunday. I would say, Mr. Rayo, that the only minor thing, depending on the position of the high, uh, will we start getting into where the high is a little, the air mass stagnates a little bit. We get, some nighttime and early morning low clouds and fog in some places. I don't think it's going to be like it was over the prior 2 weeks, where it was every single day, and a lot of times the clouds never got out of the way. I think this is going to be a little different. We'll have more of an offshore wind rather than onshore, and that should allow for the weather to be okay most of the time.
I'm going to say that I'm going to be on the side of optimism and think that the models right now are all pretty much stating that once we get into the weekend, into the early part of next week, temperatures will be in the high 60s to around or within a degree or two of 70. I think that the models are going to end up underplaying this. I am not thinking in terms of any onshore flow. I'm thinking that what we're going to be looking at is temperatures that will be at or even above 70, save for those who are literally right down by the water. And we could be indeed challenging a few records when we get toward the end of the weekend and into the early part of next week. It looks just absolutely great. But speaking of, Joe, I went to vote this morning at 6 a.m. Kind of surprised because I didn't expect to find, I live in a kind of a bucolic rural area. And I figured, no big deal. I'll just go in there and I'll vote and it'll take me
I
five or
say,
10 minutes. There was a traffic jam on Oscawana Lake Road. I mean, like both my wife, Renata's eyes and my eyes were like bulging out. Where the heck did all these people come from? Took me over an hour to finally
Well,
vote, but
oh,
I did it under a leaden gray sky, save for a slit of bright blue and sunny weather right down by the eastern horizon, which took the better half of the morning to lift up slowly but surely, like a blanket, so to speak. And by the afternoon, we were out in the clear. We had lots and lots of sunshine. Whereas you just mentioned you were stuck underneath that little
stick.
bit of cloudiness through much of the day.
Well, I hope you filled your car up with ethyl before you headed over to vote in Pixley. But you did wind up casting your vote. I voted absentee because I was away and I didn't know when I was going to be coming back
I
on
was
my little
I
road trip.
was
So I
lucky.
figured, you know what, let me get it out of the way. I just got it done.
I was lucky because I got we the our polling place was at the Volunteer Ambulance Corps, but they have a fairly sizable parking lot. The lot was practically filled. When we finally started rolling up toward the parking lot, look who we ended up seeing, but my son. My son was already online at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he looked at me and he looked at the car and he said, "You ain't getting a parking space." But just moments after he made that declaration, there was an opening. Some car was pulling out for whatever reason. I guess they just managed to vote, pulling the car out, and I literally squeezed the SUV into that lot. The amazing thing to me this morning was one of the deputy sheriffs from the local police. They were in the parking lot, and every now and then you'd hear over the PA system, "If you're driving a Mercury Sienna, you better move it now, or else we're going to tow it. You're blocking traffic, or you're blocking. You're in an illegal parking zone." This is amazing. I mean, like that does not happen where I live. I mean, I live. If you want to say I live in the sticks, I live in the sticks. But to
Well,
see all this happen this morning at that early hour, it really shows you that it was an unusual day as far as elections are concerned, at least
right.
up here.
They usually tow the cars when they do to Bent Fork.
Right.
So you have to go from Pixley to Bent Fork to to, uh, to get the vehicle back. All right,
Yeah.
let's run through the rest of the weather because it really is a pretty easy setup here. It's awfully difficult to get excited when you're going into a big ridge for 5 to 7 days in the east and a deep trough out in the west, but we'll somehow make it work. But you can see the nice weather that's going on across much of the nation. And taking a look at the radar, this was a little from earlier today. Let me just give it a quick fresh. And actually, just a little bit of spotty stuff up around upstate New York, maybe the last snow shower of this run. And other than that, the radar is very quiet. A couple of showers in southern Utah, northern Arizona, and also up into the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, moving eastward. And that is just about it. And as far as rainfall is concerned, well, liquid precipitation anyway, over the next 7 days. You can see WPC's made a couple of changes. We're still showing from the coastal plain of from southeastern Virginia north all the way up into Maine. Hardly any precip over the next 7 days. So WPC is telling us that at least through next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, we won't see a drop of rain. I think that's a pretty good bet considering what we're looking at,
Yeah, it
unless
would be.
unless we get a surprise with the tropical system suddenly deciding to push its way northward and pushing the moisture northward. Florida, on the other hand, showing actually substantial amounts of rain here, particularly in eastern and the southern half of Florida, with 10 inches or more being forecast by WPC. And of course, this is going to be as a result of the gyre and then Eta, maybe as a tropical storm. You're also going to get into some showers late in the forecast period, some rain, and maybe even some snow on the northwest side in the middle Mississippi Valley into the western Great Lakes. So you're seeing some 3-inch amounts being shown, and a fairly decent amount of rain throughout much of the western part of the U.S., particularly in California, showing up a few spots getting up half an inch to an inch in Southern California, which this time of year isn't too shabby, and some bigger rainfall amounts and some snow in the mountains, of course, as you head on up into the Pacific Northwest. So let's run through the GFS really quick, just to give you an idea of what's going on here. Of course, in the east, it's all about high pressure that moves out, and then gradually that high reforms a bit in Virginia, West Virginia. So I think this lends to the argument that the marine layer issue is probably going to be minimal in this stretch. Rain and snow moving into the Pacific Northwest, and you see there's a low that forms in Wyoming with some decent snow showing up in Idaho and western Montana along over the weekend. This looks like Saturday night into Sunday. That runs up so far left, it goes to Lake Winnipeg. And of course, you see what it does with the tropical system. Eta comes over Cuba, kind of goes over Florida. Again, I would be very careful here because of the highly uncertain nature regarding what we're dealing with the upper air. And if we just kind of move this along, really nothing happens here. Some showers. I left up. This is the 12Z run, where it did bring some rain here Tuesday night into Wednesday. But if it winds up that that Eta somehow doesn't move as quickly and gets hung up somewhere down in Florida or in the Eastern Gulf, or perhaps never even gets out of the Caribbean, which is always possible, then we may have to wait until Thursday before the next cold front gets. Actually, why can't I put the right GFS up here? It's not letting me. So here's 156. So on the new GFS, actually some showers get here by Wednesday. It somehow wants to bring this front. It just leaves the tropical storm just kind of spinning away in the Eastern Gulf and dying out. And of course, the activity picks up again in the west with system after system coming in. Here's another one going into next weekend, not the one that's coming up, but the one that follows that heads towards the Great Lakes. So it's far enough down the road that I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Any
Look,
of this.
you got a long stretch of some of the nicest weather that we might actually have, the longest protracted stretch of nice weather all through this year. I mean, we had maybe about what we were able to get like 2 or maybe 3 nice days together during the 94-day summer. It seemed like every day it was muggy, humid, showery, sticky, or whatever. But this what we're about to see, Joe, is going to be just beautiful. Temperatures by day near 70. Nighttime lows not overly cold, probably in the 40s. Outlying spots maybe upper 30s, like we're up where I am, but still not overly cold. So get out and enjoy it. We're going to have some nice weather coming our way for starting tomorrow, but especially so, I think, Thursday on through the weekend and on into early next week. First full weekend of November, by the way.
We started this week with a trough in the east and a ridge in the west, and by the time we get to the end of the week, we're going to have a trough in the west, a deep trough in the west, and the powerhouse ridge in the east. And going through the long range, guess what? That trough in the west just stays there. It's one after another, just keeps dropping down into the western part of the United States. And while the strongest part of this whole pattern with the ridge in the east comes this weekend and into early next week, the ridges that follow are a bit more on the flattish side, but nonetheless, there is ridging in the east and troughing in the west. Which, if you're looking for the idea of some early winter weather, it ain't coming it's not coming in the next 2 weeks. Not until we see a wholesale break of the weather pattern that has set up for the first half of the month.
Absolutely. It may be that this may be one of those late winters. I mean, what was Jim Witt talking about with us last week? He felt that we really wouldn't begin to see any kind of wintry weather based on his long range forecast until February into March. So it may be a while before we see a break in this pattern. I've been often. I remember somebody writing an article, somebody saying that when we're in a weak La Nina pattern, that's good for snow lovers. But somehow or other, when you're in a strong La Nina pattern, it's not particularly good. At least
you have to have the other factors like the NAO working. If you got the NAO working, that makes it different. But if you're not going to have that, Chuck Cardillo pointing out, because he looked at the teleconnections, and I haven't. But he looked at the teleconnections, and they are totally opposite. The EPO is positive. The East Pacific Oscillation, the Pacific North America pattern is positive. I'm sorry, is negative, and the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, is positive. So you've got them all at the opposite ends of where you'd like to see them with regards to an overall colder pattern. So
Right.
until you see a change in that, I look. I'll just say this: uh, we got it now. It's November, and I can think back to, if you go back to the winters of 13, it was either 13, 14, or 14, 15. Both those winters, 13, 14 in particular, though, it was warm, very warm on those years in if I remember, from October to November. And in fact, I remember going into Thanksgiving week that we actually saw temperatures at the beginning of Thanksgiving week around like 70 or above 70 on the first day. But right after that, right after Thanksgiving, the switch got flipped, and we went into what was probably one of the longer, more unrelenting winters that the Northeast has seen in quite some time. So I'll just, last year we had a blocking pattern that set up for the second half of November and the first part of December, and then it was never to be seen for the rest of the winter. So I guess better to not that it really means, it's not like you're given a certain amount of time to have all these things, but I would much rather see the wintertime stuff show up in the winter, and the nice weather showing up now, because you can enjoy it now.
Right. And who knows how, after we go through this stretch of great weather, who knows whether or not we'll have anything like this again until maybe the spring. And then again, who's to say? Maybe in January we might end up calling it January.
Could be.
We'll see.
Although I saw Larry Cosgrove's long range forecast, and he actually seems to be rather bullish for the month January February timeframe. So he's actually one of the few forecasts that I've seen long range wise that has gone the. He's not one that goes the cold and snowy route on reflex. He looks at his stuff. I may not always agree with him with what he comes up with, but he looks at his stuff and he gives a very honest assessment, in my view, of what he thinks is going to happen. So he has an interesting perspective going for a more bullish January, February from the standpoint of excuse me, winter weather.
Bless you. Bless you.
That's two shows in a row that I've sneezed, by the way.
Yeah.
Robert Russo hit super chat tonight, Joe. So thank you, Robert Russo, for doing that. Joe and I really do appreciate it greatly. And we're coming up on 8 o'clock, and I think with the election, that's where everybody's watching. So we're going to call this a short show tonight.
I think that's probably the best thing. We don't
Right.
have we only have about, I'd say about one third to half to one third the number of people that we normally would have typically on a night like this. So might as well just cut it
Right, and
short.
there's
And
we've pretty much covered what's going on. There's not much more insight, I think, that we can impart to our audience with regards to the weather that's going on. It's just too darn quiet. Bottom line, that's what it is. It's just too darn quiet,
yep.
and well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. At least the wind finally died off around here, so I'm kind of I'm very happy about that.
Going to be
So,
a 3C night, clear, calm, and cold. Big spread in the temperatures, I think, Joe. 40 degrees in New York and coastal areas and a few urbanized localities, down to as low as maybe the mid 20s in those sheltered rural spots.
mm-hmm.
Where I live, I'm thinking that I'm going to have a temperature by tomorrow morning right under the freezing mark. We may have a bit of of frost like we had
Yeah,
on
this might
Saturday.
be a West Hampton 17 type of night. I didn't really look
Yeah,
specific, but
absolutely.
it's not impossible.
Yep.
So the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue, West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125. The website is omnitruevalue.com. They've got everything you need to get you through the winter, with the winter storms, supplies, snow melt, ice melt. rock salt, and more. So write the phone number down, folks: 631-756-1125, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. So I guess it's on to watching what will probably be a very long night. I don't know if you plan to stay up. I'll stay up for a while, and then my eyes will sink to tiredness, and I will go to bed. So you have a great evening.
Well, in case you want to look at something different, I know that you can go on YouTube and watch the election night coverage of the Mary Tyler Moore Show first season, where
Yes.
a blizzard hit, knocked out all the phones, knocked out all the teletypes, and the mayor election for Minneapolis was stuck at Turner 85, Mitchell 23, right straight through the entire night. And if you can remember Ted Knight playing Ted Baxter, trying to work with those kind of numbers all night long, it was a very, very one of the funniest episodes, and very well, considering that tonight is election night. If you don't care to watch, or you want to take a break from the current election coverage, take a look and see election coverage a la almost 50 years ago, Joe, 1971 November, with Mary
Uh,
Tyler Moore
don't
and
remind me.
WJM.
Have a good night, Joe. Everybody have a great night. Stay safe, and we will see you tomorrow at 7:30